Hello and welcome back. So, for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm John and I am a online transformation focused coach. I'm 2 weeks out from my photo shoot as of yesterday, and I've dropped nearly 40 pounds in the last 18 weeks. Now, I was able to do this by eating, for most of it, 2,850 calories, and then pretty much towards the end of prep, I've been on 2,450. A lot of people have been asking me on my Instagram, on here, and my clients have been asking, how have I done that on such high food? And how do I also do that with all of my clients, or most of my clients as well? So I'm going to drop some knowledge bombs on you today and show you exactly how I did it. Now, thought I'd be fancy, and I got the whiteboard out. So I'm going to take you through everything that's on here, but I will take you through the start of it. Now, the way that I was able to diet on such high food, and obviously I've dropped a shit ton of weight, as you will have seen from the photos that have been overlaid on the video, is I looked at this as a long-term approach. Right? I pushed my food up, I committed to a surplus for the long term. I really focused on building my physique, and I really focused on gaining muscle and staying in a calorie surplus for a long period of time. That is exactly how I've managed to do that. Now, for a lot of you that are watching this, you'll probably be in a position where you don't actually know if you can bulk yet. Okay? A lot of you might be in a position where your body fat's a little bit too high, to the point where you don't necessarily want to gain any more body fat. And that's also perfectly fine, because I'm going to take you through that today as well. And that's what I do with, I would say, 90% of my clients. Most people that I work with come to me with a slight surplus or even a larger surplus of body fat, and we've got to get them dieted down to a point that they're happy with their body fat before we actually get started. So the way that I had done this originally was, when I started with my coach, I was actually pretty lean. I'll put some photos over the top here. And I just come off the back of some really bad health. I couldn't really train very well. My food wasn't really digesting. That story is for another video. I will go into that at some point in a different one, but that set me up pretty nicely to go into a surplus. Now, I committed to being in a surplus for around 2 years. You don't have to do that, so don't worry. But you need to be in a surplus for a decent amount of time if you want to be able to push your food up. Now, because I started in a surplus in January or February, sorry, of 2024. Obviously, now as I'm doing this video, it is May 26th. But because I did that for nearly 2 years, my food went up and up and up and up and up, to the point where I was eating 4,000 calories a day at the end of my bulk, and I wasn't really gaining that much weight. Now, because I was on 4,000 calories and that pretty much ended up being my maintenance, I was actually able to cut a lot of weight in the first 4 weeks of the diet on 31 to 3,200 calories a day. And that's obviously come down over time as the diets went on. However, I've not really found it that difficult. Hunger's not really that bad. And even though I'm 2 weeks off my shoot now, I'm on 2,150 calories. That's the lowest that it's going to get before we start before we actually do the shoot. And I've dropped so much fucking weight, and I'm still dropping it today. So if you're someone who is in a slight surplus of body fat and you're not really too happy with where you're at, I've basically mapped out a 12-month roadmap for exactly how you can cut on higher food. So when I do this with my clients, obviously we will normally have an app, right? The app will give them a full roadmap of exactly what they need to be doing and when. And that will obviously tell them exactly what phase they need to be in, so they know exactly what it is that they need to be doing every single week and every single month. Now, I've mapped out from January to December, just for simplicity here. Hopefully you can all see this whiteboard. Now, for most people, what I would do, right, say for an example, if you're starting now from the beginning of May, I would normally get somebody to do an initial 8-week aggressive fat loss phase. Now, the reason why this is so important is because you can get body fat off very, very quickly, especially compared to how quickly you can gain muscle. So you can see here, your rate of loss for an aggressive fat loss phase should be around 1 to 1.5% of your body weight per week. That's what I would generally aim for a lot of people. So if you're 100 kilos, you should be aiming to lose 1 kilo to 1.5 kilos. If you're someone who's 60 kilos, you should be aiming to lose 0.6 kilos to 0.9 kilos per week. And that's the rate of weight loss that we want, because if we get to the end of a 6 to 8 week fat loss phase, or sometimes even up to 12 weeks of fat loss, like, you can drop a shit ton of weight in that time. And yeah, might be restrictive and all this, but realistically, if you restrict for this very small amount of time, you have all of this period of time around it there to enjoy social occasions, to have more food, to focus on building muscle, to have more energy, to enjoy your training. And again, as we spoke about, bring your calories up very slightly. So I'm going to use this as an example because we are coming up to summer right now. So we would cut all the way through May and June for 8 weeks, lose around 1 to 1.5% of our body weight per week. So we'd lose around 8 to 12% of our body fat over that period of time. Now, I've put a little asterisk next to beginner or inconsistent, because if you are someone that is a beginner in the gym, or you are someone that has been inconsistent for a while, your body will also be a lot more sensitive to muscle growth and hypertrophy. So, or muscle growth slash hypertrophy, I should say, which means that you will actually build muscle in that deficit as well. Now, you're not going to build a shit ton of muscle in 8 weeks, but you will build some, 1,000,000%. So we should still be pushing our training as hard as we possibly can during this time. Now, if you do this 8 week fat loss phase just here, we would then go into either a maintenance or an improvement phase. Now, the reason I put maintenance there with a little question mark is because it's summer. Some people might be going on holiday. People might just want to not be, gaining body fat during the summer. Most people I work with will probably just want to go straight into an improvement phase, which would leave us with all of this time here, right? 6 months of increasing your calories, enjoying food, enjoying social occasions, especially around Christmas. Now, I would always expect that this little period of time here, towards the end of the year, someone's probably going to gain a little bit more body fat because it's Christmas, there's more alcohol, but I do show every single one of my clients how to manage these occasions without overdoing it, without putting too much weight on. I've actually had clients lose weight over Christmas and still enjoy themselves and go out. It can be done if it's done properly. That's a topic for another video. Now, when somebody comes to work with me, their calories will naturally be a little bit lower because they haven't got very much muscle and they've not really been watching what they're eating for quite a while. They'll be lower during this time because it's an aggressive fat loss phase. Now, out the other side of that, I would then bring their calories back up to maintenance. Then I would put them into a very, very small surplus of 150 to 250 calories, depending on the size of the person. As time goes on, the weeks go on, we do the weekly check-ins and we review body weight. Now, you will get to a point in a surplus where your body weight has now started to stall. That just means that your TDE, so your total daily energy expenditure, has gone up. 1, from the thermogenic effect of food. 2, probably from moving a little bit more because you've got more energy. And 3, because you're heavier and your body's also used to eating that much more food. So then we increase calories by another 10%. And then another 10%, and then another 10%, and that will increase multiple times over the course of these 6 months, okay? Once that's done, your calories are going to be a lot higher. So let's say, for an example, we've cut here on 1,500 calories. We might bring them back up to 2,000 during this time here. Then they'll increase by up to 2,220 calories. Then it'll go to 2,4, 2,6, and then 2,8. Now, if your calories were 2,800 by the end of this year, maybe even a little bit higher for some people, what you'll then be able to do is go back into a 4-week mini cut aggressive fat loss phase post-Christmas for a little bit of a tidy up. Then once we've gotten this tidy up, we'll aim to lose 4 to 6% of your body weight. Now, because your calories are higher, you will be able to cut here on much more food. You can probably cut here on 17 to 1,800 if you cut on 1,500 before. If you repeat this for 1, 2, 3 years, as time goes on, you will be able to eat more and more and more food. And the period of time that you actually spend here, 12 weeks of the year, dieting is actually not very long. For some people, they won't even eat a diet for that long. And like I said, social occasions can still be worked in. You can still have all these nice things if you want to, just within moderation. And obviously, you will have to restrict at some point during these fat loss phases. But this is exactly how I would roadmap out a full year for my client. And as I said, by the time we've got from here all the way back through to here, you should be doing your cut again, getting significantly leaner on higher food, but also having way more muscle because you've gained a lot more muscle during this time. And that's ultimately just what this all comes down to. It's just about being super consistent with your surplus and then super consistent with and regimented with how your cutting actually works. Because as I said, you do a mini cut to tidy yourself up because we can lose a lot of weight, 4 to 6%, even in 4 weeks. Then we can gain 0.25% of your body weight per week over 16 weeks, which would then bring us up to, 4%, 5% of body weight gained in most cases for a lot of people. Then you do another cut and you will be even leaner than when you did your first cut with more muscle and on higher food. It's literally that simple. That's all you have to do. And that's exactly how I cut on higher food. I did this for 2 years. My calories started at 2,700. I ended up on 4,000 a day. And now the calories that I was bulking on at the start, so I was bulking on 2,700 calories. I was gaining weight from that. Like I said, for the first 4 weeks of my cut, I dropped weight on 31 to 3,200 calories. And for most of the year, I was actually on 2,850 calories. And I dropped a shit ton of weight doing that. So that's because I committed to a longer term process. I gained a lot of muscle in the long term and I allowed my body to adapt to higher food. Now, don't get me wrong, as I said, I'm now back down to 2,150, but it's also because I've been dieting for fucking 20 weeks. My calories will go through the roof again in a couple of weeks, and I know for a fact that I'll probably be able to maintain my body weight at this lighter weight on around 3,500 calories a day. I've got loads of room for social occasions in there. I've got loads of room for nicer foods. I'm going to have loads more energy. It's going to be a lot of food for the first few weeks. I won't mind that. But the point being is I committed and made this a longer term process. And the reason why most people have to diet on low food is because they don't commit to a long term physique process. If you commit to this for 2 years, you can build a fucking incredible body. And the level that it takes to actually get there, yes, it will be effort. I'm not going to lie with you. But by the time you get to the end of that and the point that you're happy, all of these habits will be consistent on a day to day. You'll actually be enjoying the process and it will just be a part of your life. And if you're training 3, 4, 5 days a week to get that physique, you can easily maintain that in 2 sessions a week once you're happy with where you're at. Like, it takes a lot more work to get there than it does to maintain that physique. And the reason why most people don't succeed is because they don't look at it as a long-term process. All of my clients that I work with that have ever achieved a really good result have worked with me for a minimum of 6 to 12 months. Minimum of 6 to 12. Some people that I work with currently I've been working with for 2 years. They've all made really, really amazing improvements, of course. But as I said, you need to be looking at this as a long-term process, because you can spend 1 year to 2 years really honing in on that physique, on that training, on your nutrition. And then realistically, if I've done my job right as a coach, that person that I work with should never have to be, looking at tracking calories for the rest of their life potentially. They should be able to just go to the gym and know what it is that they're doing. It should be a part of their day-to-day routine. They should be emotionally regulated around food. They should be able to know what it is that they need to do if they want to cut by themselves again. If I've done my job right in the first year or two, so that person should never have to have another coach again. Ever. Because I put such a big focus on educating my clients and making sure they all have the tools that they need, not just to get there, but also set them up for life. And if you work really fucking hard for 12 to 24 months, then trust me, you're either one, going to fall in love with the process to the point where you don't even want to stop after 2 years, or two, you should have every single tool that you need. Now, the other things that I wanted to mention here were nutrition. Obviously, looking in terms of nutrition, we need to make sure pretty much consistently we're having, on a bulk, 0.7 to 1 grams of protein per pound of body weight. For cutting, you want to be at 1 gram to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. And you pretty much, for most people, you want to be having around minimum 50 to 70 grams of fat for most people, somewhere around there. As long as you've hit all those targets, just make the rest of it up with carbs. Make sure you're getting plenty of dietary fiber in for health, digestion, because if you don't get dietary fiber in, you're not going to get as good results. That's also going to help you feel fuller when you're cutting as well. And in terms of your training, this has to be a consistent. The exact same things that you do for your weight training should be the exact same throughout your cut and throughout your bulk. You should always be trying to improve your numbers and match your numbers in the gym. I've been cutting for, as I said, 18 weeks now. I'm 2 weeks off my photo shoot, and there's only one exercise, the side lateral raise, for whatever reason, that my weights have dropped on. Everything else is maintained, and that means that I've maintained my muscle and maintained my strength throughout the long term, because I've managed my sleep, I've managed my stress, I've managed my recovery, I've watched my nutrition, and every single set that I do inside the gym, I train to or close to failure. I'll put some videos over the top to show you exactly how to do that, but you know that you're doing that when the concentric slows down. And the biggest issue that a lot of people have with training when they do this is as soon as they go into a fat loss phase, they then go, oh, my strength's going to drop because I'm in a fat loss phase. And then they just commit to losing strength essentially and losing muscle. And that's genuinely the reason why most people do. I've had this conversation with so many clients. They go, oh, well, my strength's not going to maintain on X amount of calories. It will. If you just push yourself, it will. 100%. I've had clients do bodybuilding shows, win trophies in those bodybuilding shows, and their strength didn't drop until the final week of prep because they were on like 1,000 calories at the time. She was a female, obviously, and her strength didn't drop until the final week of prep. So you can continue to push. You're not going to be getting a shit ton of muscle during that time, but you will continue to get stronger if you just push your sets in the gym. And like I said, the speed of the rep, the first rep should be pretty quick. The speed of the concentric on the final rep should be around 2 to 3 seconds. You'll have seen over the videos that I've overlaid over the video here of the speed of the first concentric. So me actually lifting the weight compared to the final rep of me actually lifting the weight will be significantly slower. So that's how you know that you're training close to failure. Other than that, as I said, it's really easy to diet on higher food when you just commit to it being a longer term process. But if you want to diet on higher food just for doing like an 8-week fat loss phase or a 12-week fat loss phase and then it's one and done, you're probably going to have to diet on lower food. Unless, of course, you put your expenditure through the roof through doing a shit ton of cardio and a shit ton of steps, which I wouldn't recommend unless you need it because you're doing like a photo shoot prep or whatever it might be. Okay? You don't need to go in and do a fuck ton of cardio. But like I said, your food will have to be low for that initial fat loss phase. But the most important part of a fat loss phase isn't actually the fat loss itself, it's the reversal out the other side. It's making sure that you bring your food back up nice and slowly, and in the longer term, you will reap the rewards and you will be able to eat more food, not just for a cut, but for the rest of your life. Enjoying more social occasions, enjoying more time with friends and family, enjoying more, things with your partner or whatever it might be, going out and having a couple more drinks on a weekend, if that's what you want to do, you'll be able to do that so much more if you just commit to making your physique transformation a long-term process and not an 8 to 12 week one. Again, 8 to 12 week fat loss phases are very, very helpful to get body fat off quickly, but they're not the end result. You'll not build loads of muscle in 8 to 12 weeks. It just ain't going to happen. You've got to commit to either a maintenance phase or a very slight surplus where you bring your food up over time and continue to get stronger, because that's where good physiques are built. That's exactly how I built mine from the photos that I've shown you at the start of the video. I went from being the same body weight. In fact, I'll just put the photos here. I went from being the same body weight here to the same body weight here, and I'm significantly leaner on the right hand side, or the left hand side, whatever side it'll be on when I upload the video. But yeah, like I said, that is the main thing. Make sure that you commit to it being a long-term process, and you will be able to diet on higher food, just like myself and just like all of my clients that commit to a long-term process.